This is ABC-7 at 9 on the El Paso Las Cruces CW.
Good evening and thank you for joining us on air and online at KVIA.com. I'm Stephanie Valle. We begin tonight with the latest out of Dallas, where health officials confirm a second nurse who treated the Liberian man who died of Ebola has also contracted the disease. Medical records show 29-year-old Amber Joy Vincent inserted catheters, drew blood, and dealt with Thomas Eric Duncan's body fluids before he died last week. It's still not clear how she contracted the virus. Officials are concerned because Vincent was on a Frontier Airlines flight from Cleveland to Dallas the day before she started displaying symptoms. Investigators say 132 people also boarded that flight. Tonight, a top federal health official says the nurse should have never been allowed on board a commercial plane after caring for an Ebola patient.
At that point, she was in a group of individuals known to have exposure to Ebola. She should not have traveled on a commercial airline.
Vincent just arrived in Atlanta, where she will be closely monitored by the CDC. The federal agency is also trying to get a hold of every passenger aboard the plane during Vincent's flight from Cleveland to Dallas. Officials say Vincent showed no symptoms while on board, but each passenger will still be interviewed and potentially monitored. And here in the borderland, the response to any possible cases of Ebola is ramping up. ABC-7's Andrew J. Polk got a first-hand look at the plans and preparations at University Medical Center today. Andrew continues our weekly coverage.
One is in this country is 100% ready to manage it. If someone would walk in the door, I don't think is realistic at this time. I think everyone is still scrambling to obtain the equipment they need to be able to take care of more than one patient that potentially could have Ebola.
UMC currently has 6 rooms that could be used to quarantine and treat Ebola patients, but standard equipment could only handle those patients for about 3 to 5 days before the hospital would need outside support to continue that effort. But it's trying to expand that capability now, similar to what's in place at the designated hospitals.
So we do have rooms that we have ready available to use. However, if there was a large influx, we would have to get that equipment in and create additional rooms.
Johansson also says UMC is stepping up its training and exercises on using personal protective equipment because it doesn't matter what kind of gear you're using if you don't know how to use it. In particular, how to take it off while avoiding contact with the disease that may be deposited on the outside.
There is always a risk, no matter what level of protection you put on, if you're not paying attention to how you take it off. When you take it off, that is when you make yourself vulnerable for cross-contamination.
Andrew J. Polk, ABC-7.
Some of the sterilized equipment UMC needs includes advanced waste systems, because nothing, not even sewage, can leave a room where an Ebola patient is being cared for. Johansson says UMC is in a similar situation to hospitals nationwide, trying to get that and other equipment with demand outstripping supply. Moving on now, the prosecution and defense are preparing tonight for a second day of testimony in a hearing involving Daniel Villegas. His attorneys want his confession to a deadly drive-by shooting in 1993 thrown out of evidence. This is the third time the district attorney is pursuing capital murder charges against Villegas, who was 16 at the time of the shooting. His 1995 conviction was overturned by the Court of Criminal Appeals in December of last year. The state called 3 former El Paso police detectives to the stand today. All of them denied hitting, threatening, or even yelling at Villegas. But under cross-examination, Earl Arbogast and Carlos Ortega admitted they made a mistake and changed their testimony since first taking the stand against Villegas 20 years ago. Another interesting turn of events, former Detective Scott Graves testified Villegas supporter and local businessman John Mimbella had contacted his wife's boss and sent packets of information and photos of a young Villegas to his home. Graves said he felt harassed by Mimbella.
Sometimes tell John that maybe he shouldn't be so aggressive. Yes, I have, but John does what he does. He's very passionate and believes strongly in Daniel's innocence, so I'll deal with that.
The prosecution did not want to comment after the hearing concluded today. Spencer told me he expects the testimony to wrap up tomorrow. The 409th District Court gets back in session at 8:30 in the morning. A 16-year-old Hatch, New Mexico girl is facing a slew of charges this evening after a deadly head-on collision. Prosecutors charged Vanessa Rodriguez with negligent child abuse resulting in death, vehicular homicide, unlawful taking of a motor vehicle, and for being a minor in possession of alcohol. She's being held at the Doña Ana County Juvenile Detention Center without bond. The deadly crash happened last night in Hatch. Investigators say Vanessa Rodriguez took her parents' truck without permission and decided to go drinking with a friend, 16-year-old Sonia Rodriguez. Police say Vanessa crashed head-on into a car driven by 32-year-old Elida Garcia, who died at the scene. A 50-year-old woman in the car with Garcia is now being treated for injuries here in El Paso. Deputies say Sonia Rodriguez died because she was partially thrown out of Vanessa's truck. A 13-year-old boy riding in Vanessa's truck was also injured.
We are truly a community in mourning over the tragic deaths involved in this traffic collision, not only from a perspective of law enforcement because it occurred, but because it's truly a loss for our community. It was a very horrific accident, one of the worst that I've ever seen.
Sheriff's deputies say the charge of negligent child abuse resulting in death will allow prosecutors to try Vanessa Rodriguez as an adult. Prosecutors are also awaiting the results of a toxicology exam to determine if they will file additional DWI charges. Vanessa told investigators she crashed because her friend Sonia wanted to go back home and grabbed the truck's steering wheel, causing her to lose control of the vehicle. To Stormtrack Weather now. Stormtracker Nicole Gomez is live with your first forecast. Hi, Nicole.
Hey there, Stephanie. Today and tonight, our temperatures are looking just as nice as well.
All right, we're having some issues with your microphone, Nicole, so hopefully we can get back to you to get our forecast. But in the meantime, we will move on to Tuesday. ABC-7 profiled former El Paso Mayor John Cook, who's traveling the state campaigning for Texas Land Commissioner. And today, his opponent, George P. Bush, was in town campaigning at an event hosted by UTEP's college Republicans. ABC-7's Darren Hunt spoke with Bush in an exclusive one-on-one interview you'll see only on ABC-7.
You could say it's in the Bush family genes to serve others.
George P. Bush is the nephew of former President George W. Bush and grandson of former President George H.W. Bush.
Some of my earliest memories as a kid growing up has been involved in public service, whether it's from my grandfather or my uncle.
This is a picture of 12-year-old George P. leading the Pledge of Allegiance at the 1988 Republican National Convention.
Your uncle, his former advisor, calls you 47 for the 47th President of the United States. Any possibility of that?
Well, theoretically, I guess there's always any kind of possibility, but really my focus right now is for winning this race.
The next Bush for president could very well be his dad, Florida Governor Jeb Bush.
He's giving it some thought. I think that I, along with a lot of other Republicans, think that he could offer so much not only to our party to unify it, but to our country.
His opponent, El Pasoan John Cook, has logged more than 30,000 miles campaigning. While he realizes beating a Bush is a long shot, his tune is to not back down.
Stand me up at the gates of hell, but I won't back down.
I guess you don't sing like John Cook does?
I don't have the musical talents. Maybe that's why members of the Bush family stick to politics. I'm running like I'm 10 points down, and that's why I'm in El Paso.
What kind of advice has your dad, your uncle, and your grandfather given you?
The consistent one is to out-hustle your opponent. I've been campaigning for 23 months, traveled over 180 counties, and I think through that hard work and through that diligence and that focus, it tends to lead to good things, and it's led us to this point where we feel like we're in a good position to win this race.
Darren Hunt, ABC-7.
The Office of the Texas Land Commissioner manages billions in state assets, investments, and mineral rights. Early voting starts Monday, and Election Day is November 4th. Proposition 1. It is the only state constitutional amendment on the ballot for the upcoming election. And tonight, a warning from an El Paso state rep why the failure of Prop 1 could bring highway construction projects around the state to a screeching halt. Plus,
A Halloween tradition is canceled this year in this El Paso neighborhood. I'm Pilar Arias. Here why next.
We are tracking changes to your weekend forecast. I'll talk about those details coming up in Stormtrack Weather.
this is ABC 7 at 9, where news comes first.